Hello and welcome to Eat Sleep Code, the official Telerik podcast. I'm your host, Ed Charbeneau, and with me today is Jeremy Sinclair, Microsoft MVP, Windows Insider, DevMC, all the fun things in life.
Yes, yes.
How are you doing, Jeremy?
I am doing great. How are you doing, Ed?
Not bad. I try to make the best of introducing people, and I always feel like there's something missing. Uh, what else have you been up to, Jeremy? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right. As many of you may or may not know, I'm Jeremy Sinclair, Windows Insider MVP, um, a person who is absolutely obsessed with all things Windows on ARM. And I'm an enterprise.NET developer. And really, I've just been doing everything I can to keep occupied, entertained, and just to see all the cool stuff everyone else is doing.
You like to geek out to things, and I think that's one thing we have a lot in common. And in geeking out to things, I've noticed you've been, kind of to a lot of events that I've been to, and then some. You get to go to things that I haven't been to in a while. I know you're Dev MC at Microsoft Build recently, which sounds really exciting. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
I was an open ecosystem dev MC alongside with Hayden Barnes, and really, I see the dev MC as typically everything I do during these conferences. I go and watch a lot of the sessions I'm interested in, and I try to what I call essentially tweet spam. So throughout the individual sessions, I'll take screenshots and try to get all the pertinent information into a tweet thread and get everyone hyped up, because a lot of the things that I see throughout events such as Microsoft Build is so exciting, and especially this year. This year was like unexpectedly exciting. Like
Yeah, I didn't personally watch Build like live, but I did watch your Twitter thread.
oh,
So
perfect.
that was actually better. Like I got like the summary of it. I still got work done. Build can really suck you in. Like you can like totally shut down and be like zero productivity. And I was like, I've got something I've been working on project wise, and I'm trying to get over this deadline. And I was like, I'll just tune into Twitter, and of course you're somebody I follow on Twitter, and I was getting the fire hose of all the stuff that was happening. But what were some of the big things that happened that you really enjoyed?
Some of the big things were, one, you can now add Win32 apps in the Microsoft Store. For a while, it was like a private preview, and only certain people could get in. But now it's open to everyone, which is huge, because this means that there's really no excuse for anyone to not have their app in the Microsoft Store. Another thing was a lot of the focus on AI. So Azure, and even the local devices, such as the ARM devices, they were showing demonstrations on how you could have on-device AI and split bits and pieces of it to Azure, and then just combine them together. So it's you have best of both worlds. If you want to do local processing or cloud processing AI, and just the performance was just amazing. And I haven't really done anything with AI. I mean, aside from the current fad of the Dolly 2 with Dolly Mini, and just randomly throwing things in there and see what it generates.
We're gonna have to circle back to that one because that's a fun one.
Yeah. But a lot of other things that were announced were think, what was it, the Microsoft Store now has like an ad program where you
Okay.
can basically set up an I forget what it's called, an ad. I'll just say ad engagement campaign. There we go, ad campaign.
Yeah, that sounds very markety.
Yeah, and it was
I
cool. They kind of talked about how the store is going to be better at really categorizing your app and putting it into the forefront whenever users search throughout the store.
Okay, so this is like an ad program to help promote
Yeah.
your app in the App Store. So when you talk about App Store, like in ads, like a couple different things can come to mind. Like I was picturing like an ad program where, in your app, you have to like watch 30 seconds of video to get a feature or, 5 Jeremy Sinclair coins, that sort of thing. But you're talking about more like the App Store itself,
Yep, right in the Microsoft Store. It's which I think is really great because previously the old Microsoft Store, it was kind of you search for something and you get so many results that had nothing to do with the app, and so it could kind of push people away. But now with this, it has a way where if you wanted your application to show up where it needed to show up, it's, hey, here you go. This is, Jeremy Sinclair app. You do a campaign, say, hey, you can have this percent off, or they were talking about all the revenue streams that you could set up with it. So I think a lot of the focus I saw in these regards were more geared around the fact that they're listening to developers now and trying to make things, listening more to developers. It's kind of more visible. And you can see that it's just trying to promote apps.
Yeah, these app stores have really gotten essential to, software from a developer perspective. Years ago, none of us would have really even thought twice about an app store or cared about it. But, the whole mobile space, I think, ushered in this app store era. You can thank Apple and Steve Jobs, I guess, for this. And we got the Google Play Store, and then I think this is one of the things that doomed one of our favorites, the Windows Phone, because the store wasn't great, and I think people expected the type of store that you see on iOS and Android, and there was a store, but it wasn't the greatest store.
Right.
And it really, they tried to launch it on Windows at the same time, and it's never been a really good experience until kind of it was too late for Windows Phone to take advantage of. I think in the last, what is it, Windows 11, it got revamped, and now it looks absolutely fantastic.
Oh, it's amazing, and like the performance alone was just mind blowing. It's no longer you open the app and then it takes like 20-25 seconds for things to pop up, or things get cached. But now it's it's more fluid. It's like it's geared towards just capturing you. So I want to use the Microsoft Store now. Oh, and not to mention you can put PWAs in there.
Oh yeah,
that's another big thing. So it's kind of become ultimate.
Apps.
Yeah. So like, a big kudos to everyone involved with that effort, because it's the Microsoft Store in Windows 11 is dope. Definitely.
That's interesting having, PWAs is like this first class citizen where it can get into the App Store, and other ecosystems haven't embraced it as well as Microsoft has. So looking at you, Apple, they've kind of tried to keep those things out until recently. They've started to let some of them in. But what this essentially lets you do is take an existing web application and kind of upgrade it a bit and make it desktop-like in many ways. And there's a lot of great APIs out there now for for PWAs to gain access to system resources and things. So you can have a very like desktop like experience from your web app, and then you can kind of package it up and put it in the Windows Store. One thing that not a lot of folks know is even a 2D application that's a PWA. You go ahead and submit that to the Windows Store. You can also submit that to the Meta Quest Store. So you can pull that 2D app up inside of your like VR environment, and maybe it's like a billing app or a banking app or whatever it is. It still works in that 2D space inside your Oculus Quest or whatever it's called these days. I still like the Oculus branding.
I had no idea you could even do that.
It's really
That's impressive.
Yeah, that means you could take a Blazor app and you could publish it on Windows desktop and inside of your Oculus. So I got you thinking now. There's I smell a blog post or a tweet or something coming.
I think I have to buy one of those still. I've been holding out, but I've heard good things.
So, see, you're a gadget fan like I am, though. Like you like the new and shiny things. That's one of my favorite gadgets. I'm surprised you don't have one yet.
I'm actually surprised also. Like just about everything else I jump on immediately, but for some reason I did not jump into the like the VR space, even though I'm really interested in it. I don't know why I haven't pulled the plug on it yet.
Was there any like VR, AR stuff to talk about from Build? Was there like more HoloLens or anything like that?
Personally, I didn't look at any if there were. I was more interested in the whole developer productivity side of things. And now that you bring that up, speaking of developer productivity, something that was announced at Build that as of last Tuesday became reality. Visual Studio on ARM, native.
Okay.
Like the one thing that everyone who has purchased a Windows on ARM device or whatever has wanted, it's like the first thing that happens as soon as you get one.
You go to install Visual Studio and it's like no dice.
Oh, it runs, but it runs in like an emulated form.
Yeah.
So it's emulating like, I'd say Visual Studio 2017, 2019 ran emulated on x86, but Visual Studio 2022, since that is running on x64 with Windows 11, you could emulate with better performance x64 from ARM devices. And now, because the IDE itself is native, it loads so much faster.
Nice.
I mean, and like I'd say over the past month or so, I've even kind of caught bits and pieces of that work being done on the previews. For instance, on the on the insider builds for Windows 11, we've had .NET Framework 4.8.1, which brought the native ARM64 .NET Framework to the mix. And I noticed that I think the preview before 17.3 preview 2, or even before that, started to pull in like a ARM64 native MS build.exe. So I'm like, okay, we're getting somewhere now.
Something's coming.
It's like something big's coming. So I found that like huge for me because I use my Pro X a lot, my Surface Pro X a lot for just about everything. And using Visual Studio and compiling, .NET apps is kind of a must for me.
Yeah.
And since, we already had .NET 6 being like the first fully supported ARM64 build for Windows, I'd always do a lot of things from command line mostly. And from time to time, I would actually go into Visual Studio and build and debug there because they had debugger support for ARM64, which was beautiful. So I could, that main process of the IDE, although it was x64, I could still it would load the core CLR debugger for ARM64 whenever, I'd have that ARM64 target. So it was cool to be able to actually debug from within the IDE. But to see the whole thing be, native, that's one of my joys.
So this, I'm not too familiar with the Surface Pro X. I have a Surface Laptop Studio or Studio laptop. However, I don't know the branding on it. It's a really nice laptop. That's all I know. It's really a nice device. It's lightweight. I had the original like Surface Book 2 where it like had the screen that detached and like flipped over and all that. It was a cool idea, but ended up being very impractical in daily use. And then I saw the Laptop Studio come out, and that one has like a similar concept, but instead of like ripping the monitor off, you kind of just like shove it and it flips over like 180 degrees.
Ooh,
and like
that
is really nice. But I haven't seen the Surface Pro X in person. Like, what kind of a device is that? I mean, you said it's ARM.
Yeah, it's a more of a tablet. So it's still in that Surface Pro family. So I would actually say if you've seen a Surface Pro 8, it looks almost exactly similar to what the Surface Pro X looks like.
Okay, cool.
So it has 2 USB ports on the left side. You can attach the keyboard, and it actually comes with like the Surface signature. Well, you can buy like the Surface signature keyboard. It has the charging port for the Surface Pen. So that's actually cool. Just being able to just detach and just attach the keyboard, and if you want to use the pen, you can just kind of pull the keyboard out a little bit, and out pops the pen, and you can draw away.
I think a Surface Pro 7 at one point, and it was extremely light. Like, you could almost accidentally throw it. Like, you ever gone to open a door that looks really heavy and like it's not, and then you grab the door and like almost break it off the hinges? Like, that's the way that thing looked. I mean, you're like, oh, this thing, it's gonna weigh a few pounds. You pick it up and you about toss it across the room. But the keyboard setup on that thing was really cool. That little, what do you call that again? The little keyboards they come with.
Well, I think
there's a name for them.
Yeah, I just call it like the Surface keyboard. It's like the attachable keyboard.
Yeah, they're like
always like it's like what's it? Type. It's like type face or type cover. I think that's what it's called.
Yeah, they originally I think did call them type cover.
And that's what it's like, the signature type cover. Yeah, that's what it is. I can never remember the name, but I just
have a nice feel to them.
Yeah, it's the keyboards are actually really nice on these. And, the Surface Pro X was my first Surface device, so I was even more excited about it because it's my second Windows and ARM device that I own.
So the Visual Studio that's compiled for ARM, that runs pretty good on this device?
Oh yeah. Oh
nice.
I'll tell you, even prior to using the fully ARM Visual Studio, I would use Visual Studio 2022, and I can say even loading the Microsoft PowerToy solution, which had like 114 projects in it, thing loaded, and I could build and debug. Like,
nice.
Yeah. I think that was the impressive thing for me, because I know prior to, with just like the old like x86 32-bit emulation, it wasn't getting it. But
Sounds like a lot of work has to be done if
Oh
you're
yeah.
going to emulate something like Visual Studio, that, and then you're compiling code and running, at times emulators behind that, to do like if you're doing any kind of Xamarin or Maui stuff, that could get taxing pretty quick.
Well,
Having
with all the external processes that get ran too,
Oh yeah.
all those like 9,000 service hub.
Yeah, Visual Studio will eat some CPU time on its own, so I can't imagine having to emulate it on top of that. So that sounds pretty cool. You mentioned Power Toys too. This is something you're telling me you're very proud of. What's happening with Power Toys these days?
Well, as of the latest release, the 0.59 release, Microsoft Power Toys is now fully ARM native.
Very nice.
That's something I've wanted ever since I saw, the project come out, and ever since I had my device, I'm like, I need to run this because all these tools are awesome, and I run it on my x64 devices, and I use the heck out of it. But I really wanted that native experience to it, and so yeah, I put in some work and worked with some others and got that thing running natively on ARM.
So you had some, you had your hand in the set. God, this sounds funny, like talking about ARM. You had your hand in getting it on ARM.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, kept tripping up on that because I'm like picturing what I'm trying to say.
Yep,
So
totally
you worked
did.
the team at Microsoft with this?
Yeah, it was probably one of my largest open source contributions.
Very nice.
And there were a few things that I can make contributions to the project before, with porting a few of the Power Toys from .NET Framework to .NET Core 3.1. But I'd kind of given this a shot maybe November, December timeframe, just to see what I could do. And I saw some roadblocks that had to be done first. So there was a lot of work with just getting everything off of .NET Framework, get at least on .NET Core 3.1, and then moving things to there were projects to move it to .NET 5 and then ultimately .NET 6. But I wanted this because I knew .NET 6 was going to be the way to make it work. So any way I could help out, I made sure I made it possible, and did what I could do because this was something I personally wanted. So
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, I'm contributing as much as I can. And when I did a little quick POC of it, of getting all the projects running, I think I had that back in February-ish. I was like, oh, we can do this. We can do this. So worked with some people on that team for Power Toys, and it was nice to do a lot of collaboration because I learned a lot. There was a lot of brilliant things I didn't even know, but just being able to have a hand in that and make it come true was kind of one of my biggest biggest contributions, and this is something I'm really happy about.
Were there like any like roadblocks or anything that you hit that were like, like the big thing that you had to overcome, and like how did you overcome that thing? Was there anything like that?
Oh yeah, there was a few. One, and I think that this was more in line with ensuring that everything was just running at the same level, because this goes back to the .NET Framework pieces that we were getting rid of. There was a piece where it was a COM import, COM interop with the was it the Microsoft Search
Mhm.
interop one. Well, when you generate that, it's all .NET framework, and I was like, we should be able to get this on either .NET Standard 2 or just throw it up to .NET 6. And there was a lot I didn't realize that was being done in the background with that generated DLL with
Mhm.
was it TBL imp. So I had to actually do lots of reading on how COM worked with C sharp, and then this kind of discovered a bug with how I think it might have been. I think I used IL Spy for this, and I think
Mhm.
there was a bug with how the DLL itself was generated versus how it was being read, and I learned that there were some properties that weren't kind of generated in a non-standard way. So when it got time to kind of disassemble that, it came out wrong. So it was just broke. But then I actually used Telerik's just decompile
Yeah.
and read it through there, and it read
Oh,
it
nice.
properly. And it was the issue was, now that I remember, the issue was ordering. That was the thing that was out. The order made a difference with the methods. So based on how the actual, I guess, API for that the search API is for
Mhm.
the Win32 API for it, it needed to be in a certain order for like the get and set, and there were some things that were out of order. So when
Ah,
it got
okay.
decompiled, like by default, it would just like, oh, okay, it's a get set, so it's going to always be in this specific order. But then seeing that difference, I was like, this was the thing that was haunting me, that was making it break this entire time through this effort. Because
Yeah,
it was
it's
another one of those cases where the DLL would compile, but as soon as you got down into the runtime and you tried to run a method, it would just implode. So
it's
that
tough.
that was like my personal roadblock that I had to overcome. And there were some other things like a C++ CLI DLL that's being used, like a Power Toys interop.
Mhm.
Um, there were some, I guess, C++ CLI it works with .NET Framework, but the .NET Core support I think it started back at like .NET Core 3.1 on up. At the time, there was still UWP portions to it. And
Okay.
UWP only supports, I guess, up to .NET Standard 2 in its
Mhm.
implementation.
Sounds about right.
And so that was just kind of like the outlier that once the team actually upgraded things to the Windows App SDK and got rid of the UWP dependencies, we were able to get everything on .NET 6. Issue gone, because
Nice.
that interrupt piece was core to it. Because at that time, as I mentioned before, .NET Framework 4.8.1 was only in the insiders, and all those pieces weren't there yet in terms of what needed to load that runtime. So if it blew up, you weren't doing anything.
Yeah.
So those are like a lot of the huge ones, and heck, they like last week there was a WinUI community call where the Power Toys team, Clint Ruckus and Jime and everyone else were just on the call describing a lot of the how we got here sort of deals. So it was a fun thing, just reflecting on that. because it was a long time coming.
So for folks that maybe don't know what Power Toys is, or maybe they're newer to like the Windows stack, whatever, what exactly is Power Toys, and what kind of fun stuff is in there?
It's the Microsoft Power Toys. It's think of the old Power Toys from 1995, like the Windows 95 Power Toys,
Mm-hmm.
where you get more of those developer productivity, those utilities, like just ways to make your life easier running on Windows. Um, so it's
Like
like a
kind of like
suite of
a
suite of
set of
utilities.
Windows extensions and utilities and
Yeah,
small applications.
yeah. So if you think like, well, for instance, here's a really great example, Fancy Zones. So Fancy Zones, you could kind of set up little snap zones for little snap layouts, essentially for Windows, individual
Mm-hmm.
app windows. If you notice in Windows 11, if you hover over like the maximize button, you see that
Yeah.
little group. Guess what that's inspired by?
Came from Fancy Zones, eh?
Yep. So if you think about like all these individual tools, there's there's a good bit of them. Like they have Power Toys Run, which is probably one of my favorite, and directly related to that Microsoft Search interrupt thing that I had to fix. But it's basically, you know how on Mac OS you could do like what is it, the command space and open up that little search window and just quickly type.
It's like Finder or whatever.
Yeah, well, not even the full finder, but just like that little search bar that just pops
I'm
up.
not real in tune with the Mac universe, so
Oh,
you're gonna have
okay.
to school me on it.
Yeah, so on Mac OS, I think if you press Command Space, it brings up this little search window. It's kind of like a universal search. So
Mm-hmm.
if you start typing like an application name or a file or anything, you quickly get search results for those without having to go into a full, complete UI where you're searching throughout the entire file system in some context.
Okay, gotcha.
But it's like a quick search. Well, the Power Toys Run is essentially that, but for Windows, and there's lots of different extensions to it. So like you could start typing in like equals or like 2 plus 2, and you get a little calculator. So it's like different extensions to that utility that are more for productivity's sake.
It's almost like a little CLI here, or I'm looking at some of the things that you can do with it. It kind of reminds me of the command bar in Visual Studio Code, where
That's yes, that could probably be like a great parallel to it because it does something like that, but for all of Windows. So I think there's numerous extensions for it. For I think you could even load VS Code workspaces from the Power Toys Run. Like it's pretty brilliant. It's a lot of stuff I haven't thought of like ever, but like there's an image app where you can like crop and modify images.
This is an interesting one. Open all windows that contain a search phrase in the name of their process.
Yep.
So
That too. That's another big one. Yeah, there's always on top, so you can set an app to be always on top. Power Toys Awake, you can keep your display awake without it, falling asleep. A color picker, so you can open a color picker and you can copy out the the RGB and hex values, and it basically overlays on top of everything. One of my favorites is the File Explorer add-ons. So you can have different previewers. So you can actually preview like markdown files from within Explorer.
Mhm.
and that uses like Monaco. Do the same for like
Oh, that's cool.
SVG, and yeah, there's so much stuff in it. So everyone just needs to check out Power Toys because
Yeah.
there's a lot more stuff in there, and it's basically meant to improve your productivity altogether.
Yeah, I dropped the link into our live chat. So if you're watching live, you got a link there. But I'll put the link in our show notes on the podcast as well, so people can find that. It's pretty cool stuff, and like you said, this has kind of been around for quite some time, but it's evolved quite a bit over the years. So if you haven't checked it out in a while, it's time to revisit it and give it a look again. And we talked quite a bit about build. I know you've been to some other events recently. You flew out to San Francisco.
Yeah, flew out to San Francisco for the first time ever. Beautiful city. The weather was just on point. It was like what 50s to mid 70s. That was so perfect. Like I could live that for eternity.
Like
But
the first time I went to San Francisco, I totally dated myself by going on Twitter and saying I was going to. I couldn't wait to try rice-a-roni from right from the source in San Francisco. Like when I was a kid, like the commercials for rice-a-roni were quote the San Francisco treat. And, like,
those are playing in my
literally,
mind
like,
right now.
this pasta rice stuff that has nothing to do with San Francisco. They just like adopted San Francisco as their marketing gimmick. And like it's totally weird. It's totally an American thing especially from like the 80s and maybe early 90s or something. But yeah, I did that. Now everybody thinks I'm a big nerd. San Francisco's a cool town. Did you get well, first of all, what were you doing out there? Like what were you doing while you were in San Francisco?
Well, I attended this Pluralsight event called Link,
Mhm.
and it's really just kind of like a get together. I was invited to it, so it was a get together with select few people, and it was really just kind of like I don't know how to really describe it except for kind of like a get together of, I want to say influencers, but
Meeting of the minds.
yeah, meeting of like awesome people.
That's pretty
That
cool. I think I saw some
you know,
familiar faces out there. Pluralsight authors and whatnot, and
yeah, I met a lot of new people there, and some people that I previously spoke to on Twitter. But it was nice to like just meet others, and I felt like I wanted to get out there and introduce myself and hold conversations and
Mhm.
talk about talk about careers, how you got here, and what you're doing, and just come up with ideas and have fun. That's pretty much what it was. There is so I know I tried to post a bit about it on social media, and the Pluralsight account did an awesome job with it too. And heck, I even did a stream just with Rachel Neighbors on Sailor Moon and tech. All because I was wearing a Sailor Moon shirt.
Nice.
so
You
just like stuff like that.
us folks, we tend to geek out to things. I mean,
Yeah,
we find something we have in common and just go all in.
that's that's how we roll. It was a really fun experience overall. It was done in a way I had never seen. So I think get-togethers at conferences, there's 50 billion people there, and you don't really know anyone, and you're kind of bumping into people, and just kind of, okay, what do I do now? But for this, it was it was more contained, and everything just kind of happened naturally. I just wanted to be friendly and just talk and get to know everyone, and it was good.
Yeah, Pluralsight does a good job at recruiting their teachers or whatever they call them. The folks that make the content creators, the trainers that go on there. And it sounds like this is probably a good networking event for that type of stuff for them, as well as maybe spreading the word a little bit. But it looked pretty cool from what you were sharing online, and they're good people over there at Pluralsight. I know a couple of them there, and the authors as well. Quite a few authors that I know are really just excellent people.
Yeah, I agree. Totally agree.
So did you get to see the town a little bit?
Yeah, I did. I got on one of the scooters. Went with a few other people, and we just rode around town, which it was nice because the weather was so nice. Got a nice little breeze. Although it was weird for me because it's my first time riding one of those electric scooters you have to use an app for and scan a QR code and do all this charge by the minute, and I'm like but then I'm like, okay, with this city, since I'm not allowed to ride on the sidewalk, where exactly do I ride this thing? Because a lot of these streets weren't really built for bikes and scooters. So I was just like, all right, well, I'm assuming I just stick far right and try to hope I don't get hit by a car. So I did that, and surprisingly, the drivers were pretty courteous. So I'm assuming they're used to lots of people riding these scooters all day. Had a good time.
The weather's amazing out there too.
Yes, that's something I always want to touch on. That weather it was just gorgeous.
Like there's like a million things probably to do out there. And when I went to Alcatraz and I went down to the pier. Probably two very touristy things to do, but I really enjoyed the Alcatraz experience. But a lot of people asked me when I got back, they're like, "Did you go see the Full House house?" And I was like, "No." Like that was a pretty iconic show, but it totally slipped my mind while I was there that's where they filmed it, and like you can actually go see the facade for the house that they use in the intro. Like, yeah, that's wasn't on my bucket list. It probably would have been neat to see if I was passing by, but I don't know if I would have gone out of my way for that one. But
Yeah.
Did you get to see anything kind of cool like that while you were there?
I just remember trying to go up these steep hills on that scooter. Let me tell you, that thing was just like, hey man, you lose a little bit of weight before you get on this, because it was struggling. But it was cool just to do some sightseeing from where I did go. For me, I was more worried about, all right, I see cars everywhere. Please don't let them hit me. But it was fun though. It was fun.
That was one of the things I missed was Lombard Street.
Lombard. People I rode with, they went up there. Me, I'm like, nope. This thing is not getting up there. It was already just struggling with me getting up the first part of the hill. There was no way I'm getting up there. So I was just like, y'all go have fun and come back for me.
That's quite a steep venture there. It's very narrow, like windy road.
Mm-hmm. So I'm like, yeah, I'm clumsy as is. There's no way I'm getting up there, and with it being windy, I'm going to be flipping over somewhere.
For sure. So what other stuff have you been up to? I know we saw each other over at Star Trek. Star Trek is a fantastic conference. I had a great time there.
Me too. Yeah.
Do you enjoy the oh my gosh, the Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness? It's a mouthful. Marvel movie.
That was awesome. I
pretty
hadn't
epic.
watched the Spider-Man movie before it, so I definitely missed context. But this one was good.
Yeah, my daughter maybe watched the Spider-Man movie before, so she was very in tune with what needed to happen. Like she had the prerequisites for me. So she actually came with me to the event too. So it was like a daddy-daughter event for us. So that was a lot of fun. But she was like, "Yeah, you got to watch Spider-Man before we go, or you're not going to get it the same, as you would without it." So she made me watch Spider-Man, which was pretty good. The Spider-Man movies have been okay. They're like the top of my list, but they're definitely not bad. And
Yeah,
the Doctor Strange movie was just phenomenal, I thought.
yeah, it was surprising for me because I didn't know what to expect, but it it did work out. It worked out nice.
And then, of course, we got the Thor: Love and Thunder coming up as well uh, in
I'm
early
curious about
July
that
here.
one.
I love the Thor movies myself. So,
I'm
have you
hoping it
seen
doesn't
the
miss.
previous ones?
Yep, I've seen the previous ones. I just hope this
Okay.
one doesn't miss. Because I have a
Yeah,
feeling like if there's a good streak, it's like there's always that one movie that may just. So I'm hoping it's not that.
yeah. The Ragnarok was probably one of my favorites of all time of all the Marvel movies. So it's like there's a lot riding on this one for sure.
Yeah, totally. But yeah, I've just been working on just testing the new .NET 7 builds.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I love all the work they're doing. I really do.
I
This
think
is
we're seeing some new Blazor stuff finally. By the way, I don't know if
yeah,
you have been following that, but there's some new data binding stuff that's coming that should be pretty interesting for folks. So they're expanding the bind directives on that, so you can do a bind get and a bind set.
hmm,
And the reason for that is if you've done an eBlazor and you've tried to data bind things, usually you're data binding to a property, and getters and setters on a property are they're pretty basic.
mhm.
You can kind of fudge them a little bit and get um, kind of hack them, I guess, lack of a better term, to do some things that you want them to do, especially with like MVVM patterns and things like that. So what they're adding is a bind get and a bind set directive. So you can have two methods that handle the getter and setter instead of just binding directly to a property. So you can get real creative with that. So I
That's
think that'll be
impressive.
interesting. That
Yeah.
was merged into the code base today. So that
Ooh, okay.
yeah, that
So
should
if you
make it
get
in the
that
next
latest,
release. Hmm.
actually, yeah, because typically what I like to do is run the daily builds many times. And that's why my NuGet folder is like 26 gigs. I have to keep uh, clearing the cache because I'm running all these daily previews. But
Yeah.
it's cool to be able to to see all that work being done and just the whole community involved with improving the performance and just making .NET better. Like I always find that like super awesome.
Hmm. And you're part of the .NET Foundation, aren't you?
Yep, I've been. Let's see, how long have I been a member? I think since about 2018 or so.
Hmm. That's quite a bit. That's probably since it started.
Or no, I think it was open a few years longer than that. So it
Okay.
might be 2018, 2019. Who knows? One of those years.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's just I like I like being a part of it because I learn things from different members, different teams. Like I've especially learned a lot in this pandemic with the .NET Virtual User Group. So uh, being able to help run the stream of the user groups from behind the camera
Mhm.
And to watch like all these user groups just come together, like when everything was just completely in person, you only had like a select few you could go to with within the bounds of your city or however you're willing to drive.
Yeah.
But yeah, just seeing user group meetings from all over the world, essentially, like super impressive.
Yeah, if anything positive came out of the whole pandemic thing, it's the streaming of events. Um, you used to see a lot of these things, they were accessible in person only, which required a lot of expensive travel and hotels, and it was only for a select few to be able to do that. And a lot of these things are just live streamed now, and the benefit I think is where things are coming back, so the folks that do want to travel to those things can go do that and go get the hotel and meet folks in person. But we're not leaving out people that can't do that, and they can still see the content.
Right.
And with meetup groups and things, you can still meet these people virtually in person. Chat with folks that you've seen do presentations and stuff like that. So I think it left us in a better place in that regard.
Yeah, totally. And I could say personally, it's been beneficial, because I think it was for .NET 6. I forget what it was that made me think of this or even want to do this, but I made my first contribution to the .NET runtime because I was like, you
Mhm.
know what? I use this stuff. I've been talking about it for a while, so let's just make it happen. And just seeing that kind of that community aspect of it. It's like, hey, we have these things that are in the needs help or great first issue. I can contribute to this, but at the same time, seeing these user groups present things, present
Mhm.
topics on stuff like I wanted to learn or didn't know that I would want to learn about, just inspiring to just jump out of my lane and expand into learning more.
Yeah, user groups are great for that. I've been part of one for quite some time, and I need to get back out to speaking at these things now that people are coming back and doing them in person. I did a couple virtual ones during the pandemic, but now that I can get around a little bit and travel, I need to go visit some folks again and do some in person ones. Um, they're just amazing at opening up tech to different crowds and people that are trying to get in. I've met so many people that are like they're working jobs that you know they don't correspond to the skill sets these folks have. So I've met people that are working at like Best Buy, or they're doing stuff in food service or whatever, but they're really interested in tech. And you start talking to them, they know way more than what they should for somebody that's not actually working in that 9 to 5 professionally. And there's been quite a few people that myself and others have talked to, and we're like, yeah, you're good enough to get out of this service industry that you're in and go ahead and apply for an entry level developer position. And these people are very surprised. They're like, really? Like, yeah,
Yeah,
you've been to so many of these meetups, and you can a good bit of information, and you got these hobby projects you keep telling me about, and it's like you're ready. Like they're like, I don't need the specific degree or certification or whatever. I'm like, no, you know what you need to know. Like, you need to start getting some on the job experience, and you're not going to do that working where you're working now. It's pretty awesome to meet these people and help convince them that they're ready for the next step.
yeah. The whole landscape has changed, and that's one thing I try to try to promote and inspire. It's like if you have an idea, if you have something, and even if you're taking the time to learn, do hobby projects with, go for it.
Mhm.
Go for it, because you know the whole legacy. Oh, you need 4 years at college because because
Mhm.
and 9,000 years of experience at an entry level job. It's like that stuff that's past. There's so much that you can get from doing your own thing, taking time to do hobby projects, and putting stuff up on GitHub, and just going out and having fun with what you're learning. I see that as being more valuable
Mhm.
than anything, because that shows that you're willing to learn, and you're willing to do that continuous learning and growth.
Yeah, not to get off on a big rant, but it keeps you out of hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt too.
Yeah.
Uh, there's value in university and stuff like that. I'm not totally anti uh, higher level education and whatnot, but meeting folks that definitely can go into the field and do the work, and they feel like they're being held back by a paper. It's just it always hits a sore spot. And
Yeah.
it looks like we're getting a raid here.
Oh,
So we're getting pretty close to wrapping up here, but I do appreciate the raid from C Sharp Fritz, another fantastic community member there. Um, and he kind of came in at the perfect time here because he does a lot of the things that we're talking about. He's one of the people that's out there teaching folks how to get these skills. So C
mhm.
Sharp Fritz, if you haven't seen his channel, just
I've,
absolutely fantastic Twitch channel.
I've directed many people to his stream too. People
Mhm.
wanting to learn him, like, you start with Jeff Fritz. He goes basic level. He answers questions, and like he makes it in a way where, oh, okay, I get that. I get that.
Absolutely. He keeps it fun too.
Yeah.
I've seen the Clippy costume there. I don't know if you've watched the channel recently, but he's got the Clippy costume, the green screen, and squirrel costume. He has a lot of fun on his Twitch stream.
Yeah, that's the important part. Having fun with what you love doing, that makes it all worth it.
And where can we find out more about you, Jeremy?
Really, the primary place you can find me is on Twitter at Sinclairinator with a zero, as
Mhm.
seen on my little name. Let's see, right there. um, I usually talk about tech and a bunch of other random things. Um, but yeah, you find me there. And yeah, that's pretty much me.
And of course, you can find the podcast here on Twitch and a lot of our other shows here. But you can listen to Jeremy's podcasts on your favorite podcast app. So I'll publish this up on SoundCloud in about a week here. Got a bit of a queue built up, and I release a show probably every week to every other week on our SoundCloud, which then rolls out to like the iTunes store and all of that good stuff. So folks can listen in while they're on their daily commute and whatnot. But I appreciate the folks coming live today to listen to us chat. And Jeremy, appreciate you coming on to talk about the projects that you're passionate about. It sounds like you've had a good year so far. We're only about halfway through, and I hope that you have a amazing rest of your year.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on here. And yeah, like I said, it's mid year, and there's still more to come. So I might surprise y'all with something.
Awesome. It was great chatting, and I'll catch up with you all soon. Take care.
All right, see y'all.